You're listening to REIAcast, a podcast of the Southwest Florida Real Estate Investment Association. REIAcast brings together a variety of real estate entrepreneurs from all over the world to share tips and ideas. The core purpose of the Southwest Florida REIA is to help members become more profitable and successful through networking, education, and empowerment. Here are your hosts, Jeff Tamarello and Michael Lyons.
I am Jeff Tamburello, one of the directors of the Southwest Florida, joined by the esteemed Michael Lyons, director of the Southwest Florida REIA. How you doing today, Mike?
Good, man. How are you, Jeff?
Good. So we just came back from the IMN Single Family East. I think for IMN, I want to say it's my fifth. I think it was your first.
First one, yeah.
What'd you actually think of it, Mike?
You know, I've never been a big conference get together. It's just never been my thing. I always anticipated I could probably be working instead of networking. But the more we've done with REIA and networking with people, you make contacts. That's how you do business. I thought it was fantastic. I plan on being a regular every year and met a lot of good people. But and we'll go into the details of kind of what we learned and what we took from it. But I feel like you go to those types of events, you evaluate what you're doing. You recognize where you're probably not doing your best at, and it's really great for like self-evaluation for your company and how you're approaching things. So I thought it was fantastic. I really had an experience, and I'm not one for, and I enjoy people and networking, I guess you'd say, but I kept thinking I could be working right now, while I was there, but little by little more I was there, I more enjoyed it. So good experience. How about you? What were your thoughts on it? You've been to 5. I mean, how would you evaluate that one?
This was my fifth, and the funniest thing that popped out to me is, and there's one in Nashville, and they do one in Miami for the East Coast. I haven't done any of the West Coast ones. I actually kind of want to, but just to go to get some amazing sushi in Cali. So, because Cali to me is the best sushi I've ever had, and I lived in Japan for a little bit. Has always been Cali, but the after parties were definitely not as extravagant. So it appears the marketing budgets in the built to rent business have gone down a little bit in the last few years with the market correcting. So
we didn't have crazy. Yeah, there was nothing crazy going on after really, but it was a good time. I mean, the networking, the amount of people, the discussions were awesome. I know we'll go into some detail there, but
although Paul Lewis with asset-based lending never disappoints.
No, we're
going to give Paul a shout out.
Shout out to Paul for being exciting, we'll say.
And very entertaining.
Very entertaining.
Yeah. So one thing I did notice is there was a lot more of us there. There's a lot more smaller operators there, which is cool. Right. So couple other things I picked up on. Internal management is definitely the way, which is why I always say so many people get focused on particularly the big Wall Street type entities, and they're focused solely on the rental side of just, the yield that this asset's going to provide. And if this goes down or this happens in the market, they're going to sell it. But you've got people who put together all these business models that ring these things. So you've got a management company they formed. They've got their own internal maintenance company. They've got lawn care companies, which you could probably spin these off and sell these books of business. Not that they'd be worth much if you sold the underlying rentals that drive it. But, there's a lot more to this than just, the yield on the rent. And they also, but the beauty of that is it's just not as many seams. You control things. Why I always laughed at it's why I invest with me and you do stuff out of state, because the property manager's got half his money in a deal. He's not going to rob himself. So.
It's interesting you mentioned that, and I talked to a lot of other property managers. I was on a panel where there were a couple, and that was a lot of interaction. And you're right. It's in there are a lot of property managers that I think that do an awesome job, but like any other business, there's a lot that don't, and they have access to a lot of funds. And if there's not transparency and communication and all the things, I mean, you could really lose a lot of money if you don't know who you're working with. So, I mean, one of the things I took away too, we mentioned communication, and a lot of the classes and discussions is communicating with clients, communicating with the market, the changes. I mean, communication is huge. And I don't know. You're right. Some smaller operators were there. A lot of good discussions of what people are doing to be successful. From a smaller scale, I think one of the classes was like take 2 units to 1,000 units and how to do that. But just awesome interactions and communication. I thought it was just really good. And there's a lot of new software too. I know you and I went around a few times and talking to booths and people and what they offered. And a lot of lenders, which is normal, but there's a whole lot of new software coming out, and I think that will be ongoing. I think every couple of years there'll be updates that will only improve the quality of the business. But I think the other part, and you mentioned this, you can't lose the human element in business. I mean, there's that aspect that AI and all the other awesome things that it brings, and it's incredible. But there is a human aspect to do business that you still. You gave some examples of getting information and then having to go in and then tweak it to where it's where you need it to be and kind of get rid of the parts that don't apply and with as efficient as it is. Again, communication is huge. AI is incredible. That was I took away from that. But at the same time, there is the human element that you need to make sure you have some kind of balance in your business. You can't go all AI and then think you're going to have tons of success. You still
I've been
got
dialing some pretty wild stuff up with AI recently, trying to, and honestly, I've got an investment, kind of a custom chat GTP that I just keep programming. Please make sure we don't do this. Please flag it if it's this.
yeah,
I did a couple things this morning on it that if it's in a flood zone A or AE and older than 85, to put a warning in about FEMA 50, and then make sure you've underwrote for FEMA 50
sure,
in the event of a remodel. But the uh, the AI thing, as I'm getting deeper into it, like there's AVMs are out there, and I mean the one guy we talked to, he's like, well, we're basically they're efficient, they're effective 70% of the time. So I'm back in my mind, I'm like, bro, so you're wrong 30% of the time.
30%.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I paid you $5 to pull this off your server to give me this number, but pretty sure you're not going to be here with me writing a check at the closing if
nope.
this goes bad. So, that part of the industry is definitely the valuation side still takes somebody that knows real estate. And ultimately, it's will somebody write a check for to either rent or buy this thing, a real
Yep.
live human being. But because I started playing around with some of these different AVMs, and then I realized, Open Door and Zillow lost how much, and I think they had a room full of people 1,000 times smarter than I am.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
but I think the focus on that though was the AI side of it, which is don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing it. There's a huge advantage to all this new technology, but at the same time, you got to have some oversight, and it doesn't know the details of the difference between the Miami market and the Fort Myers market. I mean, a lot of that stuff that you really have to dig deep into and know your market well. AI is not going to pick up on that. So you said 30%. Imagine being wrong 30% of the time. How well that would work out in business. That's not good percentages, man.
yeah,
Uh,
well, particularly if you're deploying capital into something
yeah,
like a trade, not, if you're a long enough hold, you'll probably survive that if you missed it. But if you've got the staying power, a couple other interesting things they talked about. Everybody, rent compression was one of the things I heard the most. Rents are going down in some markets, and but then taxes and insurance. So you've got something in the industry. You've got rents compressing while taxes and insurance go up.
yeah,
So, yields are down, and that's where that probably helps to be everything in house in that market.
yeah,
So, because as the economy slows down, at least you can dial back stuff and it's a little easier.
sure,
Uh, it's one thing a couple people brought up that, this market is where the shrewd, experienced operators actually do it.
yeah,
The people that could either get in front of VC people in California, particularly, or could get on social media and raise a bunch of capital. They're all literally going bankrupt right now. So
yeah.
not all of them, but a decent chunk of them. And I tell you, I found today there's been like 5 major real estate companies in Manhattan that have filed for Chapter 11 in the last 10 days that own like big office buildings, big hotels. This is really the 80, what we're going through right now as a country. It's really resembling a lot more of the 87 crisis, where it's big commercial assets. Everybody else is just not having as good of a day as they once were, but the big commercial stuff is what's taking the beating. But we may do another video about that next week. Some of these filings are people that you would just want to, these companies, you'd want to sit in a room and hear what they're doing. I mean, it's smart people. They just didn't see the big picture and didn't protect themselves. They went in on assets they knew and didn't diversify enough. But it's definitely an environment where, the aftermath of returning to normal after COVID, the experienced operators, particularly the experienced data-driven operators, are the ones that are going to succeed. I called it the Me Too real estate investing, not for the bad thing that they, for, harassment, but, everybody, yeah, I want to do it. I want to be real estate. Me too, me too. And the Me Too side that everybody, because it was cool and sexy, they're all going back to where, once they came. And
Yeah.
but that was one of the guys on the panel. The way he said that, it really hit me. This is a time where if you're data driven and you've got experience, it's a choppy sideways market. So most people don't know how to trade that. And, most of them don't. I'm seeing a lot of people that don't want to admit it's a choppy sideways market. And if you won't admit it to yourself, how are you going to make money in it?
Oh, well, not even that. I think accepting it, one, but two, there's an advantage. It is choppy. The margins are going to be smaller, but less people can play in that game. So there's an advantage I see there too. If you can buy and you got cash and you do it right, although your margins will be slim in some cases, not as good as they were 3 years ago, but at the same time, less people to compete against to a certain extent too. So there's that advantage, I think. But owning the fact that it is the margins are less, and you got to be more careful and do due diligence. Anyone can get lucky. You could have bought property. Every property you would have bought during COVID, you would look like a genius a year later, because it just, there was you didn't have to be very selective, knowing what we know now. But now you got to be smart and approach it methodically, and check the details, check the costs, check the insurance rates, real estate costs, your expenses, and see if the numbers make sense. And again, as long as you can recognize that's the case and you're smart about it, you still can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
You just got to do it right.
You keep talking about the AI panel. That's the one I was on.
Yeah.
I was impressed with how many people were actually there. I mean, the room
Yeah.
was full. It was definitely a sexy topic. A couple things I took out of that are, same thing. While it makes you more efficient, more nimble, I'm using it, the underwriting thing. I throw a couple things in and it tells me, okay, you need to spend more time on this deal. But ultimately, like I put something on Facebook on this fire damaged house that a wholesaler told me had light smoke damage, but somehow the flames had broke through the roof and the pictures that weren't taken, and
Yeah.
so I drove up there, looked at a house, did go, me and Chris went and looked at it because when it comes to the rehabs, this would have been a higher end rehab. She picks out everything because, I mean, she married me. She has exquisite taste.
She is incredible at her men's selection.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like, the colors and all that, she does a good job with that. And on top of that, she does a good job with it frugally. It's not like we're out to Saks Fifth Avenue picking up vanities, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
we buy them right. She'll go find it and she saves us money. But so her and I had a nice lunch, but it was kind of a wasted trip. If I'd had all the information to make the decision, uh I would have bought it. But obviously, that's the biggest thing. You've got to AI can do a lot of things. It can do your calcs. Hey, adjust this. Hey, if I want to hit this percentage, what's this? It's really good at that. It doesn't really make mistakes. You can give it rules that, hey, if the lot is smaller than this, please give me this warning if you program it in. And, and you can do that with a lot of things. You can do that with a checklist, but this is infinitely faster sitting on an app on my phone underwriting a deal. But you cannot, the ARV, in my opinion, has to be done, the human element, 100%, the ARV and the rehab cost.
100%.
Because that was another thing that Zillow and Open Door, that was an automated algorithm, I believe, that came up with their rehab costs, or they hired basically Uber driver types to go out and take pictures, and then they did estimates based on those pictures, trying to, save money. And ultimately, to quote the great Dana McGrath, you have to do your own work.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. Well, that, and like anyone, And you have to have really deep pockets and not much brains if you're going to buy a bunch of property and not walk through it and look at it yourself, or with a trusted professional, either inspector, GC, that can really look in and know what you're buying. The AI is not going to do that for us, at least no time soon. It would be incredible if they had some AI type robot that went in and walked every room and could look through the walls and tell you this all needs to be fixed, but we're not there yet. You've got to
that would
have
be amazing.
That would be incredible. I think we just came up with an idea. I think we're going to create a robot that does inspections. So sorry, inspectors in advance. But like, I mean, you've got to look at it. I mean, I've had individuals that well, it makes me think of, you'll recall this. There's a guy that bought what he thought was a home online, never came and looked at it, came down here, and it had been condemned and like demolished by the city. Do you recall that?
That's happened a lot. And that's the 108 Williams where you and I met.
Yeah. Demolished.
Yeah.
Years later, right? Yeah.
There's actually like a new habitat type house. I think Jamie Outen built it. You know, the big league guys. I think they built the house that's on it. And well, I mean, my rehab obviously wasn't the best. You guys' rehab obviously wasn't the best because it's been torn down. But by God, Jamie Outen just fixed it. He built a really nice house on there. And I'm pretty sure that's one of Jamie, the big league builder's houses. I haven't looked it up, but it's got the looks of one of his houses. And he's building a lot in that part of Fort Myers.
Sure.
But that guy bought it, bought a tax deed, thought he was doing this, thought he was doing that. And this not only had the city of Fort Myers demoed the house, he had some massive liens on it to cover the demo. And, something tells me that if the city hires a demo contractor, it's probably not going to be the best bid.
I'm going to go with
I'm thinking they didn't catch it on half off Tuesday.
No, there was no Taco Tuesday discount on that.
100%. You paid a lot. So I mean, and that guy in question that we're talking about, he had to let the lot go back.
Wow.
So, and it was ironic that he called me because I'm like, man, there's just something. I'm like, maybe I should go get this lot from the city of Fort Myers, or we're just meant to be together because it just keeps showing up in my life. But that was probably the 6th flip I ever done was that house. So, the AI panel was interesting. We had a couple Silicon Valley guys on it.
Yep.
So, which I thought my quote we each had an amazing quote on the panel. My quote of the guy who was talking about how different Miami is. And I'm like, well, I just bought a pretty nice boat. I was pretty happy with my life. And then I went to the Miami Boat Show and I realized I am dirt poor.
Yeah. Well, mine. Yeah. I mean, one thing I think you and I have always tried to do, when we're real, how we're acting right now in this video is how we are in our life. This is normal for us. And then as the few that I watched classes, great information, generally speaking, but it was very business and very serious almost. And for my panel, it wasn't even my turn to speak yet, but a gal was on there talking about pets and the amount of tenants that have them. And it's a huge number. And my response to that was, you have pets because you can, instead of kids, because you can put those in cages and not get in trouble. And not that I'm advocating for kids in cages, but when I said that, the room kind of lost it. It was kind of fun, but that was a good time. On the panel that I participated in with some really sharp people and really enjoyed them. They're great. We talked a lot about something you and I've talked about many times in our real estate meeting. When it comes to rental property, obviously the acquisition and the inspections and all the costs associated with purchasing it, rehabbing it are super important. But once you have the asset, one of the most key components to the whole process is tenant selection. The due diligence you do to do background checks and verify that you're getting a good tenant that's qualified for the property. And that can make or break you. You can have a great investment. You put a tenant in that can't pay, that's had 1 million evictions on their background because you didn't do the background check. You're buying a nightmare problem. And so that's huge. I mean, we discussed that in kind of in detail of how important that is. We kind of joked, and I think someone joked on the panel that it's not a protected class, but the only downside I found with doing really good background checks is you still have the human element that we keep referring to that you can't verify with their documents. Are you crazy? I wish you could put that on an application. You can't, because there's people that would lie anyway about it. But man, I've dealt with some people. I'm just like, is everything a problem? Like just make a mountain out of a molehill for no reason. And that part you really can't avoid if you do it in volume. But tenant selection is huge. We discussed that in great detail in the panel I was in and or on, and I was huge. It was just it's a huge part of successful real estate holdings. Your tenants that can pay rent and pay on time and take care of the property. That's an element that,
Well,
again,
the one
AI.
lady that brought up the pets on your panel, and I was sitting there thinking about this after it,
Yeah,
she said 80% of their units have pets. But
yeah.
then again, she's really pet centric. So, because you could tell she was that lady that her dog is her baby.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So, they
But
may
although
let
I say that though, in dealing with the week about 1,000 doors we handle, I don't know if it's 80%. And again, there's a few owners that don't allow for it, but generally speaking, not most, but a lot of people have pets. I think I would kind of think more 50, 60% have it, but there are a lot of people that
Well, and
have
then the
animals.
other lady, something that I've been thinking about too, that was on the panel with you, the lady too, I think it was your right. She brought up that they would rather monetize like fees to pets, like additional rents and stuff like that, rather than try and do deposits.
Yeah, you know what? And we're going to implement that. I love that idea. Um, it's been kind of hinted around. I think one of the problems when you have a company with a bigger company, you want to make sure everything's in unison. And for the longest time, pet deposits just kind of the norm of what you did. But if you think about it, pet deposits are anywhere from 300 to $500. If it's 50 to $100 per month to have that pet, that the furry kid, people pay that. So let's say if your deposit's $500 and your pet monthly pet fee or whatever you want to call it to have the pet there, 6 months into it, you're money ahead. So, if they stay for 3 years, that's a lot more money than the deposit they put down. I mean, so I think it's a brilliant idea.
Oh,
More,
and claiming deposits can be a little subjective if you get, just depends on, you miss a deadline and you don't have any access to that deposit, you know what I mean? As
yep,
opposed to
a
that's kind
fee.
of a sure thing. And I mean, there was a time in my life I was a tenant with a pet, so part of me is like, man, that's wrong, man. Come on,
Mm-hmm.
man. You're gonna charge my poodle rent.
Yeah,
So, but
yeah,
it's just business. It is what it is. A couple of other interesting
yep,
things. We ran into. I've done business with him. We actually met the principal of it. You and I were having breakfast at First Watch downtown, like 7:30 in the morning, talking about land, and he hands me his card. I ended up selling his company some land, but Southern Impression Homes, their assets in Ocala and Jacksonville are still doing great in spite of everything. And I got online and verified it, and at least what I can find, readily apparent on the interwebs is saying that's the case. That particularly Marion Oaks is a part of Ocala that the build to rent side's done well. And so there's pockets doing fine where there's pockets, and really, if you look, Jacksonville is Jacksonville. It's its own world in Florida, the Navy bases, and it's kind of a gateway to Georgia. So it definitely is a little different than the rest of the state. And then the Ocala Marion Oaks, there's an insane amount of wealth in the Ocala area. So,
yeah,
and then you've got colleges and stuff nearby. So that was, I found interesting. One
yeah,
of the more interesting guys on a panel was Jerry Katz. He owns a big insurance company, and he has a company, and he was up there as Black Marlin, I think, real estate fund. And he's still primarily bullish. His niche is multifamily in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. The more I think about it, if you buy that right, I mean, the rents are going nowhere but up.
yep.
There's no where you getting competition from because the whole thing is built out, so it's really infill type development.
Yeah, but you said
But
it right. If you buy it right, I mean, if that's what it comes down to, if you're able to get a deal done there, you can hold it. You're right. They're not building nothing else unless they're tearing it down, and that's pretty few and far between.
yeah, now I found that to be interesting because there's so much capital flying out of there.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
like I joke as the last person in Weston, turn out the lights when you move to Cape Coral because, it is, they're just all here. So yeah, it was a lot of interesting stuff. I actually, that panel Jerry was on, that was the one about yields that I really liked. And he has an approach where you basically your insurance bill is, according to him, some of the freest money you'll ever get back. Because, typically he says, and he owns a big insurance company, that, these guys are trained to sell you more insurance than you need. They're all on commission.
yeah.
And some of the, especially you think about if you own 100 doors and 100 houses and you save $100 a year per house, that's significant.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. No,
That's an
I
HVAC
agree.
system. That's an HVAC system and a couple repairs.
No, it's huge. It's huge. No, there's just a lot of good information. One thing I took away from it, I don't think it was point blank said by someone, but as you listen to multiple people talk about the success they're having or what's working and what's not working. Again, this is more just a thought I had after listening to everything, but I think it's important. The difference between a company that's a pretty good company versus a really successful company, in my opinion, is details and follow-up. For example, property management, all property management companies collect rents, they handle repairs, they sign leases, that's just a very normal function of a management company. But there's so many other detailed aspects that are somewhat unique to each property, whether it be a code violation, a lease violation. There's just so many randomnesses to the real estate world that the follow-up to those details, in addition to your normal operations, are super important. So some kind of system to both handle the follow-up to those details is huge. I think everyone is really, really good at opening the door. It's the closing it, making sure it's done and handled is the part that a lot of companies miss out on. And that part, to me, I don't know why I get it. It wasn't something that was point blank said by any individual, but I took away from details how important they are and the follow-up to make sure they're it's a to-do list you write down, or you have some kind of reminder or AI related thing that, some bot that tells you, hey, you've done this yet. Those are huge. And that is the difference. Even with anyone I've worked with that is successful, they follow up to every little detail. And then that's impressive. That's what we're supposed to be doing for our clients. And again, I took that away from kind of a combination of many individuals. You can just tell they're super detailed. They're looking at the details to make improvements, to handle their clients, to improve their profit and loss. I don't know. Details are super important, and the follow-up to those details on a regular basis makes the difference, in my opinion.
Cool. Well, I mean, I know it was a great event.
Yep.
I'll definitely will keep attending. Actually, ironically, you and I got some of the best Mexican food I've ever had in Miami, which is usually more Cuban focused.
Yeah.
That last place we had dinner was pretty amazing, and actually had one of the best hamburgers I've had in a while. And I did not realize there was so many Canadian Maple Leafs fans in one place until we showed up there watching the hockey game. And I'm a Florida boy.
Yeah,
So
that whole place went nuts. And when the Canadian team came out, I'm like, whoa! All right, welcome to Florida.
Yeah, and then we left too early because next thing you know, Florida's up by 4 goals. So it's too bad we didn't get back there. But
Poor Mike Terry. Shout out to Mike Terry, man.
Yeah. Mike had a bad night that night. That wasn't his best day.
Well, good experience though. Definitely plan on going each year and inviting members of our group and anyone else that wants to have a informative, educational, great networking time. The whole thing was awesome. I very, very much enjoyed it.
Cool. Awesome. Enjoyed talking to you, Mike.
Same, man.
This concludes this edition of REIAcast. Be sure to subscribe to receive our next episode. You can also subscribe at our website, www.SWFLREIA.com. See you at a meeting soon. Please let us know if you have a suggestion for a future episode.